Hello, my name is Reina and this is Chow and Tell. When I was growing up in India, there used to be this ad campaign on the walls everywhere. And I think it was an anti-drug campaign, but one of the things I remember, they had all these cheesy rhymes. And one of the things I remember there is them saying, don't play with fire, the consequences will be dire. And I think in that case, they were referring to drugs and narcotics, but not real fire. And my guest today is an expert on cooking with fire, not playing with fire, but cooking with fire, and the consequences are anything but dire. So please welcome to the show my friend and colleague from a food class, Ivan. Hi, Ivan.
Hi, Reina. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's great to have you on the show, finally.
Great to be here.
Yeah, we were together in a food class for 3 months and a bit, every week.
It was a great class.
It was really fun, and we got to know each other. A lot of people in there, all foodies of sorts, all different sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a bunch of people that would otherwise may not have come together under normal circumstances.
No chance of it. No, it was great.
But now here we are, and Ivan is a barbecue expert or aficionado.
I like to eat and I like to cook barbecue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about your shirt.
Oh, I'm wearing my Hullabaloo barbecue shirt. A few years back, I started a competition barbecue team.
Oh, yeah?
And,
I didn't know this.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to know everything about me ahead of time. I started a competition barbecue team in part because I felt like I was ready for it. I kind of take my time.
Yeah.
So I learned how to barbecue first by eating barbecue.
Fair enough.
And actually, I'll go to the very beginning. Is in my hometown of Lexington, I was walking down the street and I smelled the most beautiful smells, and I saw the smoke rising up, and I saw there was a barbecue contest.
Yeah.
And I went up and checked it out, and from the outside I saw that there was a tent set up with a bunch of people, mostly men, mostly overweight men, but sitting around tables and having food brought to them. And I'm looking carefully, and they were opening these styrofoam boxes that had delicious looking food, and I said, "What's that gig?" And they said, "Oh, those are the barbecue judges."
Oh,
said,
really?
Yeah. And I said, "Well, how do I become a barbecue judge?" And so that was the beginning of my
job.
journey. That was about 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah?
And it was kind of the beginning of the barbecue contests that are now pretty common across the country.
Yeah.
But back then it was not so common.
Oh, really? So this is like a relatively recent phenomenon that people are getting into barbecue.
And they also, all these TV shows with, cooking shows and things make it much more common to see barbecue, learn about barbecue.
But it's weird because it's an old format, I would guess. At least the cooking with fire bit, sort of the overarching,
absolutely,
idea of sticking stuff pretty much right into or very close to a very hot source.
Yeah, so it.
I mean, I think caveman style.
They did. And they either grilled, and you do that with certain cuts of meat that need to sear, or they cooked low and slow for those cuts of meat where putting it on a hot flame would actually just toughen it into shoe leather. So the key here is that you use the cuts of meat that respond well to the low and slow of barbecue. And also the smoke itself seems to make a difference in how the barbecue cooks.
Wait, so now I got to stop you there.
Sure.
To figure out the difference between grilling
right.
and barbecue. Because in my mind and many people's minds, when you say let's have a barbecue, you have your little round hibachi grill
come on over, we're having hamburgers and hot dogs.
Hamburgers and hot dogs, and you put them on the grill, or your veggie skewers or whatever,
That's
and it heats it.
Right, that's a noun.
And it gives it the stripes.
That's an event. I'm going to a barbecue. Okay, so barbecue in America means that somebody's going to be cooking over fire and they're going to serve it. But generally when you go to a barbecue, it's grilling, which is the high heat, something with 350 or above, where they're searing.
And it takes actually very quick.
Right.
That's the whole point of it, is that it's easy, it's quick, there's not a whole lot of prep involved.
Right.
You throw stuff on it, literally, you just...
It's delicious. You can make a great steak over a hot grill, that's for sure. But when I say barbecue, I actually mean it more as a verb, which is you're gonna do barbecue, and that's low and slow over temperatures, and generally the temperature range of of the barbecue that I do is in the 225 range, maybe 250 at most.
So that's much lower than,
Much
say,
lower.
you know, say, what is a standard oven is like 350,
Yeah, if
375.
you're searing a steak,
This is
it might
in
even
Fahrenheit,
be 450.
by the way, not
right. So,
centigrade.
yeah,
For all you people in the metric system.
right, we're not on the surface of the sun, right? Yeah, so generally when you're grilling, it's like 350 to 500.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
You're cooking a steak.
It's hot.
Right.
So this is much lower temperatures and therefore much longer times. But it's different from, say, sticking it in the oven and at the same 250 or so.
So the what makes it different is the smoke. Okay, so if I were to take the same cut of meat, we'll talk about that if you'd like, but the kinds of meat that respond well to barbecue, you could do it in the oven or even in a crock pot, okay? Because again, that's a low and slow method. You can, with the oven, you'd turn it to 250 and just let it go.
Right.
And in the end, you'd have something that would probably be the right consistency.
Okay.
But what it would lack is that smoke flavor, okay?
Okay, so that typical kind of smokiness that a lot of good barbecue, like if we go out to eat barbecue, it has that. There's a very particular scent and aroma and taste to it.
And actually even a look to it. If it's done well, if you have some cuts of meat, you'll end up with what's called a smoke ring, which is this red ring around the outside of the meat. Like if you slice brisket, you'll see a smoke ring. And that's because of a chemical reaction. Some people think when they see, let's say, chicken that you barbecue, it can have a redness near the bone, but that doesn't mean it's undercooked. It's actually the chemical reaction of the smoke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you learn that that's not a bad thing. In fact, for a judge, we like to see a smoke ring, and that tells us we're seeing.
Because with chicken, especially, it's kind of one of the ways that lay people test the doneness of chicken is like you go near in the inside, and if it's pink, especially chicken, like we eat many things sort of semi-cooked or even uncooked. But chicken is not
definitely
one of them.
Not. And as a judge, you'd be afraid of having something undercooked. So it's very simple. If you cut the chicken and you see the juices run clear, it's fine. It's as simple as that.
So
but it could have a red tinge to it, especially near the bone. That's where you generally see the smoke has reacted with the bone.
So that's a smoke reaction.
That's a smoke reaction.
Wow.
Right. So we were talking about smoke, and you make smoke by using a fuel source like charcoal or even just plain wood. I tend to work with just with charcoal, and then I put lumps of wood native to this area, in some cases like apple or oak.
Oh, wow.
Or get hickory.
Can you tell the difference between the taste of this?
Certainly you can.
I'm sure you can. It's like a fine connoisseur of, say, olive oil or wine or anything.
Some are very easy to tell. For instance, if you've had...
I'm zero in that department. Like, it's smoky, it tastes
If you've had something that's cooked with mesquite, you will know it, okay, because it's a very strong smell. And just to kind of give you the insider's tip, what smells and tastes most like barbecue, at least the way you classically think of barbecue, is hickory.
Hickory.
Very good.
I knew that.
You got it. Right.
Cool, well, because you see it on a lot of store-bought meats. You say hickory smoked so-and-so. I don't know how authentic those are compared to like...
They might be working with a hickory concentrate or something like that, but I'm working with the real wood.
Something that's... somebody I know once told me that they saw these drops, like you get vanilla essence or you can buy oil of almond. You get smoke flavor.
You can.
Liquid smoke, is that it?
It's called liquid smoke. And
what is that?
It's not fake. It's actually made, so if you were to take smoke, and I'm not a chemist, okay, but you were to actually bring the smoke up and into a chamber where it would cool down, like a distillation, and you cool it down, it would actually drip the smoke concentrate, and that's what you have. So I don't work with that generally, except in the wintertime when it's really, really cold and I just need to have that fix, okay? Somewhere around February or March, I'm dying for it. But other than that, I don't work with it. But if you wanted to make your food taste more like barbecue, a drop of that goes a very long way.
Oh, okay. So you just would put it on the meat?
So let's say you were doing a crock pot brisket. Okay, and you put the brisket in, you probably put some liquid in for braising, a drop of that in there, and it's going to taste a little more like barbecue.
Okay, so it's like almost like stewed, but in that smoky kind of marinade.
That's right.
Of sorts.
That's right.
I'm mixing up a lot of terms
here. Right. We're
speaking of which, I did want to understand what brisket is. I hear this term. It's not something I grew up with at all.
Sure, yeah.
And I was telling you earlier, except on the Big Bang Theory, this show where the Howard, the Jewish character with a very, very cranky old Jewish mom. Apparently, she makes a very good
I want to
brisket.
just go on record and say my mom is not cranky.
Okay,
Other
your
than
name
that,
is
you
not
got
Howard.
me. Other than that, you got me. Okay. So brisket? One thing to know about barbecue is that you're generally starting with really tough cuts of meat that if you think about an animal, the working muscle.
Yeah.
Okay. That means it pushes the animal along. So the brisket is in the chest area of the cow, which does all of the work to keep the cow up and keep it moving. And so if you want something that's like, going to make a great steak, you're going to go from an area of the cow that has to do hardly any work. So like the tenderloin or the filet mignon.
Which is where?
It's
I never
actually
understand these
from
terms.
the back, near the spine, where it's not actually doing any of the work there. Okay. So here, lots of work, lots of muscle. The same with the pig.
It's tough.
The same with the pig, where you're using what's called the butt, which actually isn't from where you think.
It's not?
No.
I'm so disappointed. I always thought pork butt.
No.
Pork butt means you're eating this sort of...
No, you're not eating the butt. You're actually eating the shoulder. Because again, the pig is working hard, and I don't know how the term butt ended up being the shoulder end of things.
Yeah.
But the Boston butt is from this part, this part of the pig, and it's tough muscle. And if you try to cook it on a grill, it's going to be very difficult to make it edible in the amount of time you have waiting for dinner. So when I'm cooking a brisket,
so this is like the opposite of grilling. You want
the stuff that hasn't worked much, right? Yeah.
Which is the least tough muscle fiber.
That's right.
And you want for barbecue.
You want the one that's worked hard, and luckily for us, it also tends to have the fat marbleized throughout the meat. Okay. So while if you look at let's say a filet mignon, it's actually a pretty lean cut of meat with maybe a fat around the outside. And so you got to be careful when you grill it not to overcook it. Okay. Well, when it comes to something like a brisket or a pork butt, you actually want to cook it low and slow for long enough for that fat to just render. Okay, literally it turns to liquid. Yeah. It becomes part of.
So it's all kind of meshed in there.
And actually it drips out when I'm smoking it, so it ends up in the water pan. Yeah. But it's also on all the fibers of meat. Okay. Oh, wow. But now the smoke is mixing with that liquid fat. And now you have the beauty of barbecue. That's really it right there. That makes sense?
That does make sense. It actually clears up a lot of questions I've had for many, many years, and I just haven't gone out and found out about it. I do like to eat barbecue and meat and grilled meat even from time to time, but it's not something I grew up doing or eating. So it's kind of unfamiliar territory. I'd rather let the experts do it.
Well, a lot of people feel like you do, in part because it just takes so long.
Yeah.
I don't think it takes a ton of expertise, but what I think it does take is a lot of practice.
A lot of practice.
There's a big difference between expertise and practice to me. It just means...
Yeah. Well, expertise comes out of practice, I think.
I just kept doing it, and in the beginning it came out terrible. You know, my poor family, my friends. And so when I first, I went from judging, where I knew what I liked, to trying to make it myself.
Oh, so you basically started, that was your sort of tasting experience. So you sort of developed a palate for it, and you knew what you liked.
Believe it or not, judging, you actually take a class. You wouldn't think you'd need to take a class at eating, but you do.
For barbecue?
For barbecue judging, you take a class. It takes all day. And at the beginning of the class, it's really interesting. At the beginning of the class, they bring everybody barbecue, and let's say there's 50 people in the class, and they say
it's a party.
Well, it's actually very serious because you're going to now rate it from 2 to 9, where 9 is perfection and 2 is inedible. Okay.
And do you have any basis when you start?
Right. So what you like. So they give you some kind of a rubric to think about. It's like, all right, is it tender? Is it have the right taste? What is the appearance? And you actually judge on those 3 attributes. Okay. But when it comes to, let's say, tenderness, they teach you, okay, here's what proper tenderness for chicken should be, for brisket, for pork butt, that's pulled pork, or for ribs.
Pulled pork is pork butt.
That's right. So those are the 4 items that are done in a typical Kansas City Barbecue Society contest. Those are the 4, and for each of those, we're taught how to judge it.
Wow.
And so I did a little bit of judging. I learned what was good and what was not so good, because not everything that comes to the table is going to be great. Yeah. And then I started to actually mentor with some teams, and then try it at home. And I got better and better to the point that I started to share with friends, because I'm kind of careful about that. And then I started to bring it into work. And people are always happy to try your barbecue. Yeah.
So you have more friends now, not less.
So then it became known at work that Ivan does barbecue, and like, Ivan, next time you do an overnight smoke, I'm happy to tell you. And so actually I got kind of serious, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, Raina, because of what we did in class, but I put together surveys, Survey Monkey surveys, all right? Good. And I said, all right, we're past the point of me just giving you barbecue and you telling me the next day it was great.
Yeah, you want to know.
I need to know. And
on a scale of 1 to 10.
And actually I asked many questions, and
really?
the questions kind of mirrored the judging criteria. And I asked for comments, and I got good feedback, and so I honed it. And then a little change that I did is I started to charge people for the barbecue. Now, I probably shouldn't say this on television because I'm not working with a commercial kitchen, but I had them reimburse me for the cost of ingredients.
Fair
because
enough.
Barbecue is not cheap.
Yeah.
And now I got much more interesting comments, because when you charge people for food, they're going to tell you, I don't know if I would pay for this.
Oh, that's genius, actually, because otherwise it's a friend like, I got free food, I'm going to say it's good, so this person just keeps giving me free food, right?
You absolutely
But when you have to like pull your wallet out and say, how much would I actually put down for this?
Right, or, I want you to make me as much, I happen to make good meats, but I also love to make fish. Ivan, I need that smoked bluefish pate. That happens to be one of the things I love to make.
I have never had that. That sounds awesome. Ivan, I want some of that smoked bluefish pate. I'm saying it on TV.
All right, but if I'm charging you this amount for it,
okay.
And then I see, they're ordering like 5 half pints of this stuff, and it's not cheap. It's like, okay, they really do like it.
That's cool. So it's almost like you're developing your business from the ground up. Like you've learned. Not even from a business point of view, really, but from a passion point of view. Like this sounds like it's been many years in the making. It's an obsession that's creeped slowly and taken over kind of as a very serious hobby.
Yeah, it was hard to tell where my real work ended and where my passion kind of crossed over. But let's just say there were a few lunch times where people from my work would meet me in the parking lot in furtive ways. We'd open up the trunk of my car, I'd open up the cooler, and I'd give them bags of stuff, and they would give me money. And I thought to myself,
did the police ever come by and be like, what are you guys doing
I
here?
often thought what my management chain might think about what I'm doing if I'm not caring as much about that world as I am about the food world. And the truth is that I had some of the same thoughts. Is that, what am I really enjoying in life? And more and more it was the food.
Which is actually a big part of, I think, Ivan's story, which I really loved, is that you come from a tech background and from a management background, down the street here in Kendall Square, where all the startups are and the big business, the pharma companies and so on and so forth. And you were part of that world for a while.
Yeah, a long time. So
very, very long time.
Here's a quick synopsis. So I worked for about 10 years in Kendall Square, right down the street, before they even had a Rotary back then. It's hard to believe. But and then I worked for 5 years out on 128 for another software company. So I started as a software engineer, became a software manager, then a project manager, then a program manager, which meant that I was coordinating multiple projects.
And this is all in the tech?
Yeah, it's all in software development. Right. That's my background. I have a computer science background. And then I worked for 10 years out at the MathWorks, which was a really great experience, where I grew from having a small team to actually a relatively large team. I had about 35 people working for me doing program management and release management, which is the building of the product and getting it out to our customers. So
basically, you were for a long time in sort of
29 years I was doing that. Okay, yes.
So it's sort of the straight working world, and then slowly your backyard barbecue obsession starts creeping in.
Yeah, well, life happens, right?
Office life.
Yeah, life happens, and when I left the MathWorks, I had to think about what I wanted to do next. I did some consulting and some more project management around the Boston area, which I enjoyed because it was fun to be part of the scene.
Yeah.
And I started to see something that really got me excited, which was the food trucks that were coming into the Rose Kennedy Greenway. And I started to think about, well, how do I get into that?
Wow, so, the food really has started taking on
right, so
at
here
this
I
point,
am, I'm a project manager for a software company, but I'm looking forward to lunch. And why am I looking forward to lunch? because I love to eat, and because I love to see how the food trucks were kind of taking it to a different place, and that was kind of fun, and I was talking to them, and
So you actually do some stuff right now with the food truck, no?
Right, so
I mean, big switch from, say, the 30 years of office experience. You're kind of more out and about and doing fun things, though.
I'm at a point where I can choose what I want to do, independent of other things, and that's great. So a couple of things that I'm doing are related to food, and certainly one of them is I'm working with Blue Ribbon Barbecue, which has restaurants in West Newton, that's the original, and in Arlington, near where I live. I'm from Lexington. But they also put a barbecue trailer, kind of a food truck that they pull with a van out in Needham. And so last year I started to work there for a few days a week, and this year I'm continuing with that.
Cool. And at the risk of heresy, may I ask what, in your opinion, you think is the best barbecue in sort of the greater Boston area? It doesn't have to be the Blue Ribbon. I don't know.
No, well, I think Blue Ribbon, one of the things that they do extremely well is the consistency. Okay, and
which is important.
It's very, very important. It's kind of hard. You think, well, when the barbecue is done, you can just serve it. Well, what if you need to hold it for a couple of hours? If you're not careful, your ribs could be perfect when they're done, and then 2 hours later, when somebody orders them and you serve them up, they can just be awful. They could be just dry, and there's nothing.
Because they've just been continuing to cook.
They just dry out. Okay, you think about what ribs are, and they're a very thin meat, and the moisture can literally just wick out. So that's why you got to be careful. They do that well. I think Blue Ribbon also is very consistent with their sides. They were just voted best of Boston for the cornbread. And
I'm gonna go check it out. I don't think
it's
we've
very
ever
good.
been there.
I would say any of their sides are great. They have great.
Good sides are very important. I really like restaurants that pay attention to their sides.
Right.
Otherwise, there's places that give you really good main dish. So the entree part is good, and then they're just like, man, here's a piece of wilted lettuce and go play. And it annoys the heck out of me.
Right. Perfect collard greens are
and it's hard. I've had a couple times only good collard greens in different places, but
give Blue Ribbon a try. Now, if someone else is paying the bill, I'm going to go check out Sweet Cheeks, which is on Boylston Street near Fenway Park. That is run by a Top Chef winner, Tiffany Faison.
Oh, really?
I've only been there a couple times, and it's a high-end barbecue, meaning it costs more than you think barbecue should.
Because it seems like a kind of a people's food, right?
It
barbecue, it's a bunch of people, should be cheap, should be outside.
But if you've been
fancy napkins.
You don't think of it as fancy, you also don't think of it as expensive. And I love what Tiffany's doing with making a nice restaurant and, amazing buttermilk biscuits with honey. Oh my God.
I'm hungry.
Sorry. Anytime people spend time with me, they get hungry.
This is what I do best. I talk about food all the time. So imagine I'm hungry all the time.
Well, we're going out to eat after this.
We're going out to eat after this, yes. Excited. So that's interesting. That's really cool. And I wanted to also touch on, when you say barbecue takes a long time, like what kind of time frames are we talking here? You said hours and overnight and...
All right, so I happen to have done a smoke over the past weekend. So lucky for us, we can talk about that one. And I just happen to have a spare full brisket sitting in my freezer, so I put that in. I put it in about 9 p.m. And I get it. Actually, it takes a while to get the smoker just the temp I want, with the water pan just the right temperature, and then I put on the wood to get the smoke going, put the meat in. So I put the full brisket in about 9 p.m. and I monitor it using thermometers. I'm a pretty high-tech guy, so I have a probe.
So your tech background is coming to
I'm monitoring it on my iPhone, my iPad. I use something called an iGrill that uses Bluetooth, and so I can put a couple probes in. One is making sure the temp in the smoker is what I want it to be, 225. And I'm monitoring the temp of the meat, and of course it's going to be starting at 40 degrees, and I watch it just climb up overnight.
Do you sleep through the night?
I don't sleep really well because
it's like this child of yours.
I put the iPad on the floor right next to me. I look down because
this is definitely obsession. I'm just going to tell you, I have to break it to you, Ivan.
God
in
forbid,
case later,
I look down and I see that the temp is spiking. Which means
run out of bed, change the diaper.
If I see that it's spiking, it probably means I ran out of water. The water is a buffer, and it's also keeping the steam in there, so it keeps nice and moist. If I look down and I see it's over 300 degrees, I'm getting out of bed. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. I'm out
That
of that.
is crazy. So before we run out of time, though, because we have a couple minutes left, I definitely want to make sure that we taste the results of your labors. And they're great labors, and I want to see this. Ivan has brought us some barbecue that he's made himself, and I want to just quickly show you here on the camera. This is not the best camera, but I'll try to do it justice. So tell us what each of these things are.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the thing that's most identifiable, which is the sausage that I cut up some of it for us. And I just started with a commercial sausage. I have made my own in the past. It's a lot of work, but it's easier to buy.
And we'll taste them and
let's talk about the flat pieces there. That is the brisket. And you can actually see a little bit of, you can see a little bit of smoke ring. I think I see some red stripe on the side there.
I see.
And when I cut it, the smoke ring was more prominent. So even the fact that it's a couple days ago and I refrigerated it, you can see that it goes away. Those cubes that you see, that's the third item there. That's actually from the other side of the brisket. So the brisket is an interesting meat that has it's very challenging because it has a flat. Okay, Howard's mother was cooking with the flat. Okay, that's literally a flat piece. It's generally about an inch or an inch and a quarter thick at most. And then on top of that, in one side, is something called the point. Now, or it's all, if you go to a Jewish deli and you're ordering pastrami, which is made from brisket, by the way, and so is corned beef. So that is also known as the decal. Okay. So the flat is leaner, the decal is fattier, and the interesting thing is the flat has its grain going one way, and the decal is 90 degrees off from that. So they're sitting on top of each other, and if you slice through it, it slices. Interestingly, when you get to that crossover, you can't slice the flat with the grain. You have to slice it again, so you end up with something that's just stringy and awful. All right, so this is the flat that I showed you. That's the flat, and then the burnt ends are made from the point. And because it has the extra fat, I was done with the flat after 12 hours. And so I separated it by finding the fat in between, separated, took the flat out, and I put it into a cooler to stay nice and moist for about 4 hours before I cut it. But I took the point and I sliced it into cubes, and then I put it into a pan, and I let that cook another 6 hours.
So 12 plus 6 hours.
So that's 18 hours.
We have to taste this. We have a little bit of time left.
There you go.
And we're definitely this smell is driving me crazy. This is amazing. So I'm going to try the sausage first.
I'll have one too, because it's got to be social. That's a good quality sausage, and it's definitely got the smoke flavor in there.
That's very good. It's really smoky. It's much more smoky than the store-bought kind that you just put on the grill.
Yeah, I happen to like my barbecue on the smoky end of things.
Oh,
sorry
it's
for the
yummy.
there's a little bite at the end. You just got that, I think, right?
Yeah, I suddenly got the hot sauce.
Yeah.
We got to do a separate episode with you and the hot sauce, by the way. Ivan is just chili freak. You got to meet my husband, and you guys can have a chili off. In the meantime, I'm going to try something else, because this is great. This is so good. So the brisket, this is the brisket, right?
Yes.
Oh, and it's falling apart, even with, it's a plastic fork. And like butter.
It's a little dry because I sliced it a few hours ago.
Good.
But if I was doing competition, I'd slice it, get it into the tray, and the judges would be eating in 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Right. The last one is going to be a challenge to eat and talk at the same time. I'm warning you.
Okay, that's okay. I can do that. Oh my gosh, look at this. It's all kind of glossy.
Yeah, I added a little bit of sauce exterior here just to add. And what I like about, while you're eating that, I'll talk.
Oh, this is sweet and
so the thing about the burnt ends, which happens to be my favorite item that there is I close my eyes when I eat it. You can feel that kind of umami, that depth of flavor from the rendered fat.
It's delicious.
You couldn't eat much more than this because it's just too rich to eat a big pot. Yeah. Mine. That's the nicest compliment. Thank you.
It's so good, and I'm not working really hard to chew at it.
No, you shouldn't have to.
Because I've been to some places where, and I have very limited experience with this, but then you're like chewing it and it turns you off of the whole idea.
Yeah, it's like leather, and that's probably because it's been held so long.
You're changing my mind one bite at a time, and I will have many bites.
I'll get you into a judging class, and you'll soon be out there.
Oh my goodness!
Having the best food brought to you by
I cannot
the best
believe it.
chefs there are.
Well, thank you for sharing this with us and me, because I might just run away with this. Yeah, it's been great to have you on the show. I've learned so much today, and we're going to go out to lunch or food to Mary Chung's, which is next door.
Chow, yes.
I think you might end up being on the show a few times because you have so much food to talk about. So I'll put this episode, maybe you can share a recipe or something that you're willing to share on my website, www.kitchen-intuition.com. Oh, I got all this food out of my mouth. So I'll say bye. See you next week. Thank you, Ivan.
My pleasure.
It's been great to have you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, bye.